You're watching a Kickstarter preview on Roll for Crit for the game Our House, which is on Kickstarter right now. This is a 1v1 card game that takes place in a classic setting, 1968 farmhouse. One player takes on the role of the living, the family currently inhabiting that house. The other player will play the role of spirits and haunts that are attempting to take over the house, and it's a fight to see who can capture the most rooms and the most characters to get the most points so that the house is rightfully claimed as theirs.
The game usually goes on to either taking out your opponent's deck or going through the location deck. But you go through a bunch of rounds set up just like this, where you will set up a room, which will have a number of living and dead characters allowed to initially participate, as well as number of fate cards, which are sort of like item cards, and extra rules. In this case, all the living get an extra bonus to their bravery stat, which is sort of like your defensive stat. So you would use the blue tokens to add one to each of them. In addition to the regular stat bonus we just gave to all the living, the location as well as characters will specify specific other cards, sort of interactions with their stories. For example, Priscilla gets an additional conviction coin if June or Helena is out, but Priscilla also is affected by the opponent's team. If Albert is out, which he is, you will rotate her because she cannot do the roll action. Turns out Albert is the same because they used to be married, where one of them is alive and the other is not. So they'll have interesting interactions in that way. After you make sure all characters have their bonuses added or subtracted and rotated, you'll go down the fate lineup. The locked rooms and event cards will trigger immediately. It's the same thing during the regular game, but during setup they will trigger as well. Events will trigger, but then usually are discarded. They're like one-time effects and then will fill with another card. Locked rooms do their thing just like events, but they stay there. They're pretty much, once they're there, that's it. That's sort of locked that fate space until the room is scored. These last type of cards are hold cards. They're pretty much like items. During the game, you may be able to pick them up and attach them to a character.
You'll go back and forth taking turns, each time activating a different one of your team members. They go in order from left to right, and you can do one of 5 things. The first is to attack. So you want to attack your opponents to get rid of them. Also, if you defeat them, you're going to get points. The point value is in the corner there. You just need to roll a die. It's very simple, and you need to compare your result to their bravery level. If you are higher than that, then you remove one of their conviction coins, and they are one step closer to being defeated. If you go underneath it, nothing happens. If you match it, you get to reroll. If you roll a 1, that's sort of like a critical miss, then the character you're attacking with actually loses one of their pieces. Whereas if you roll a 12, that's a critical hit, they lose 2 of theirs. So there's some different variations in the dice results there. You can also use your dice to try to possess or damn another character depending on which team you're on. In that case, if you're a living person trying to damn one of the dead, then you need to roll an even number. If you are one of the dead trying to possess the living, you need to roll an odd number. Also, that character needs to have a number of conviction coins equal to or lower than their base. If they have higher, based on maybe some cards they got or some effects, then they cannot be possessed or damned. If you're successful in that roll, you flip the card over and you get some kind of a bonus, and it goes underneath the one who was doing the attacking that round. Then you can also interact with the lineup of fate cards here. As we said, you can choose to take one of these hold cards. You can either give it to yourself or another player on your team. They can each only hold one of them. And you slip it under, just like a possessed character, and that will also give you some kind of a bonus. In this case, that's useless to a living person, but this is just an example. You can also, if there's something that you don't want the other player to get, or if there's just nothing you're interested in, you can discard a card for no reason and just bring a new one out into play. It could be a new event, new item that you might want, something to spice things up a bit. Or if there's really nothing that you're interested in doing, you can pass. You can sit there, you can do nothing, and hope that your opponent makes something happen that will give you an advantage after the fact.
You will keep going back and forth until one team is completely either possessed, damned, or been taken out of the field. The people who either damned or possessed, so put on the card like this, actually return to the other person's deck. So they don't get added to your score pool, so you might have taken them out of the fight temporarily and given you a bonus, but it doesn't help you get that end game goal.
Yeah, so there are variants to play shorter games, but the full game is to go through either this entire location deck or, as you said, getting rid of one of the two teams completely. So that can take a while. That can be a journey for you. So there is a lot of thinking ahead, and sometimes you may want to sacrifice a character that may pay off later on in the long run. Also depends a lot on what kinds of events come out, because these can add to some players' roles. They might add to an entire team's roles permanently, for at least for that location's duration. They can really switch things up. They can even add new characters to either side that may help or hurt one of the two teams. So there's a lot of things that can change as things occur. And of course, each of these rooms has also a different point value that you get if you win that room. And at the end of the game, you count up all your points from among all of your cards. So it's a pretty relatively simple, straightforward game. You are rolling a die, so there's definitely a fair bit of randomness, which is, of course, mitigated by the abilities that you may pick up along the way.
The fate deck can be really random. You can just flip one card over that literally swaps all your bonuses out, or either buffs everyone or debuffs one. There's one card, for example, that brings there's a card for each side that pretty much removes everyone's bonus CC, brings them back to their base. So this can be a wild ride as well.
Yeah, there's pretty much an equal number of cards that help either side that we
More or less,
found.
yeah.
So it really depends on how that turns out. There might be a round that really goes in your favor, or one that really doesn't. And that's sort of where that, I think, long game planning comes in, because eventually, as you go through all the locations, and you will reshuffle this fate deck as well, hopefully that will kind of balance out as time goes on. Also deciding, when should you go for the attack to try to take someone out to get their points? I mean, that's 12 points. That's worth a pretty good number. Or is it easier, because it is easier, to just possess someone or damn them, and you won't get their points, but you will get a little boost for your stats, and they're no longer on the playing field. So you have to decide, when is it the best thing to go for one of those or the other. And also, you can see all the artwork. It's very tongue-in-cheek. Everybody has a little description. Most of them are comical, kind of based on some tropes of these kinds of classic horror movies. I think it's a fun art style. There's some flavor text. There's a little bit of role playing that you can do, but it's certainly not necessary. It's definitely, for the most part, a head-to-head dueling card game.
It is suggested that if you're playing the dead, you should make sure your eyes roll in your head and make sure your head spins around at least 5 times.
Yeah, wow. 5. It's asking a lot, but that's what they say in the book. So again, the game is called Our House. It is a 2-player card game with a spooky theme, just in time for Halloween. So you can take a look at it. We'll have a link in our description below. You can see what you think, and we'd like to hear from you. If you're back in this one, comment in the comments section and tell us what you think about it.
Until then, keep it spooky. And I'm Will.
And I'm Jonathan.
This has been a Roll for Crit Kickstarter preview.
We would love it if you liked and subscribed to this channel and supported us on Patreon as well.
If you choose to support us, turn to page 25.